Welcome back. In front of us, we have a trigonometric graph problem, and it reads, copy and complete the table of values for the relation y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x. So what we have to do first is to copy the table and complete it. The values of x are given, so we have to give in the possible values of y. So this is the table that we have for the equation y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x. So all that we have to do is to take the calculator and plot in the values directly. So starting with 2 minus 3 cos 0, x becomes minus 1.0. So we will round up to one decimal place because all the other values that were initially given are rounded up to one decimal place. So 2 minus 3 cos 30 is minus 0.6. 2 minus 3 cos 60 is a positive 0.5. 2 minus 3 cos 90 is 2.0. 2 minus 3 cos 120 is 3.5. 2 minus 3 cos 150 is positive 4.6. 2 minus 3 cos 180 is positive 5.0. 2 minus 3 cos 210 is 4.6. 2 minus 3 cos 240 is positive 3.5. 2 minus 3 cos 270 is 2.0. 2 minus 3 cos 300 is 0.5. And finally, 2 minus 3 cos 330 is negative 0.6, rounded up to one decimal place. So moving on to the question, it says, using a scale of 2 centimeters to 30 degrees on the x-axis and 2 centimeters to 1 unit on the y-axis, draw the graph of y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x for 0 degrees less than or equal to x less than or equals to 330 degrees. So it means the range for the values of x is from 0 degrees to 330 degrees. So we will now move on to the graph sheet and begin to supply the answers. So this is our graph sheet. We are going to plot the values of x against the values of y. Now what we have to do first is let us try to label the x-axis. So that is the x-axis. Now we can move on to label the y-axis. That is the y-axis. So for the x-axis, we will start with 0 degrees. And it says after 2 centimeters, that is going to represent 30 degrees. So that means that from here, from the 0 line to the first 2 centimeters is 30 degrees. So we're going to write 30. Then after that, we'll be adding 30 and moving forward. So that will be 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, 150 degrees, 180 degrees, 210 degrees, 240 degrees, 270 degrees, 300 degrees, and finally 330 degrees. So that is x in degrees. For the y-axis, it says 2 centimeters to 1 unit. So it means after you count the first 2 centimeters, label it 1, then you continue increasing 1 and moving forward. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the positive y-axis. On the negative y-axis, that will be -1, -2, -3, and so on. So the first important thing to note is we need to know each box, what it represents on the x-axis and on the y-axis. So for the x-axis, from the 0 line to the 30 degrees, we have 10 small boxes. So 30 divided by 10 is 3, which means every small box is 3 units on the x-axis. For the y-axis, from the 0 line to the 1 unit here is 10 boxes. So 1 divided by 10 is 0.1. So it means each box is 0.1 unit on the y-axis. So now we will move on to give the graph a title, which is very important. You don't have to forget about it. So we'll say the graph of y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x. Let's move on to the values once again, and we plot them on the graph. So once again, we have the x values and their corresponding y values. So we will use this table to plot our graph. So when x is 0 degrees, y is negative 1.0. So that is here, okay? The point where the two values intercept. When x is 30 degrees, y is 0.6. So the middle here is 0.5. One line below that will be 0.6. That is here. When x is 60 degrees, y is 0.5. Okay, positive 0.5. So that is it here. Okay. When x is 90 degrees, y is 2.0. So where the 2 points meet is here. When x is 120 degrees, y is 3.5. So 3.5 is the line between 3 and 4. That is exactly here. When x is 150, y is 4.6. That is a line just above the middle between 4 and 5. So when x is 180 degrees, y is 5.0. That is exactly here. When x is 210 degrees, y is 4.6. That is here. When x is 240 degrees, y is 3.5. When x is 270 degrees, y is 2.0. When x is 300 degrees, y is 0.5. And finally, when x is 330 degrees, y is negative 0.6. So after indicating the points, we are going to use a smooth curve or smooth line to join the points. So as you can see, we have joined all the points. So that is the graph. So now moving on to question 2, it says use your graph to solve the equation A 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 0, B 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 4.5. So the first thing we'll answer is question 2A. We want to use the graph to answer for the solution of the equation 2 minus 3 cos x equals to 0. So question 2A, the solution for 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 0. Whenever you are given an equation and you are asked to find a solution for it, you should always remember that you should compare it with the main equation that is given in the question. And the main equation that is given in the question is y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x. So this is the main equation. So I should compare it with the equation that is in the question. The equation that is in the question is 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 0. So I can bring the equal to sign to the other side of the equation. Let's say that is equal to 0. It means the same thing. Okay? Now, if you compare these two equations, you realize that whatever you have on the right hand side is the same. So which simply means that y is equal to 0. Y is equal to 0. So we will go to the graph and determine the value of x where y is equal to 0. So now this is our graph. The point on the y-axis where y is equal to 0 is here. So what are the values of x when y equals to 0? Remember that when you have the value of y and you want to have x, x will be given as two solutions usually. So you will have two values for x most of the time. So this is the line where y is equal to 0. Here we will have a certain value of x, and at this point also we will have a certain value of x. So what is the value of x here? Well, if you look at the graph, it cuts the x-axis about 6 small boxes from 30. So what is that? Each small box is 3 degrees. So 3 times 6 is 18. If you add that to 30, you will have 48. Okay? So which means one of the values of x is 48. Again, if you look at this point here, the curve cuts the x-axis about 4 small boxes from 300. So 4 times 3 is 12. If you add that to 300, that will be 312. Okay, so which means x is equal to 48 degrees and 312 degrees, where y is equal to 0. So we'll say it this way: when y is equal to 0, x is equal to 48 degrees and x is equal to 312 degrees. Okay, there are two solutions. So what have you realized the relationship between these two values is that when you add them, you will have 360 degrees. Always remember that, okay? So that will be a way to tell you whether you actually have the correct values or not. Okay, the two values of x, when you add them, you are usually supposed to have 360 degrees. Okay, so that is 2a. For question 2b, we want to use the graph to solve the equation 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 4.5. So let's try to work on that. Question 2b. Question 2b. The solution for 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 4.5. What did we say earlier on? Whatever equation we are given, we have to compare it with the main equation. The main equation here is y is equal to 2 minus 3 cos x. So we will compare that with 2 minus 3 cos x is equal to 4.5. So when we do the comparison, we have realized that whatever we have on the right hand side of the equation are the same. So which simply means that we want to find where y is equal to 4.5. So y is equal to 4.5. We will go to the graph to determine the values of x for which y is equal to 4.5. So this is our graph where y is 4.5 is at this point. So let's try to bring a line to see where it will cut. So this is the line where y is equal to 4.5. As you can see, y is equal to 4.5. So what are the values of x that correspond to that? We can be able to know that by tracing it to the x-axis, okay? As you can see, one of them is at this point, okay? If you trace it to the curve. So if you look at it, this line here touches the horizontal line at a point about 8.5 boxes from 120. So the first thing is we will multiply that 8.5 by 3. So that is 25.5. Then we add it to 120. So that is 145.5. So therefore we can say x is equal to 145.5. So let's try to find the other value of x. Again, from where we have y equals to 4.5, if we trace that to the x-axis, touching the curve, as you can see, we are having a line that is coming down. That is approximately 1.5 boxes from 210. So 1.5, if you multiply that by 3, because each box is 3 unit or 3 degrees, is 4.5. So 4.5 plus 210, you will have x as 214.5. Okay, so going back to the solution, therefore we can infer that when y is equal to 4.5, x is equal to 145.5 degrees and x is equal to 214.5 degrees. Okay, moving on to question 3a, it asks us to determine the value of x when y is equal to 2.5. So we will go back to the graph and determine that. Now, this is our graph. We want to know the value of x where y is equal to 2.5. So let's try to indicate the line for which y is equal to 2.5. This is the line where y is equal to 2.5. So as you can see, we're going to have two values of x. So we'll have one of the lines coming down here, okay? And that is exactly 3 small boxes from 90 degrees. So that is 3 times 3 is 9 plus 90. We will have x as 99 degrees. And let's move on to determine the other one. The other one is coming exactly at this point. So that is about 7 small boxes from 240. So 7 times 3 is 21. If you add that to 240, you will have 261 degrees. So that is x is equal to 261 degrees. Okay, now let's go and provide the answer for that. Question 3a, the values of x when y is equal to 2.5. You said that x is equal to 99 degrees and x is equal to 261 degrees. So for the last question, question 3b, we want to determine the value of y when x is 225 degrees. Okay, so let's go back to our graph to determine that. So to determine where we have 225 degrees, what is obvious, it is going to be somewhere between 210 degrees and 240 degrees. So where exactly? If I want to know that, because I have 210 here, I will ask myself, how much do I need to add to 210 to have 225? So that is 15, okay? So which means, but we know that each box is 3 units. So which means you need 5 small boxes to have 225 exactly. So that is 225. It is the midpoint between 210 and 240 degrees. So what we'll do next is to trace that on the y-axis. Okay, so it will touch the graph and we determine that value. So we are tracing that value, as you can see, where we determine x as 225. We will trace it to touch the curve that is at this point here. Okay, so this is the point here. So where is that on the y-axis? That is what we're going to trace now. We will trace that to the y-axis. All right, so as you can see, it is one small box above the 4 unit of the y-axis. So which means it is 4.1, all right, because each unit on the y-axis is 0.1 unit. So which means when x is 225 degrees, y is 4.1. All right, so let's provide that answer. Question 4b, the value of y when x is equal to 225 degrees is that y is equal to 4.1. Okay, so that is all for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If it is useful to you, please like, share, and you can comment in the comment section. Please subscribe to our channel.